All right, welcome to Simple Healthy Life, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations and topics that we find interesting. And today, we've got Krysta here. And a fun fact about Krysta is Krysta's actually proclaimed today, although it was not established today. She's my step-sister-in-law, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
okay, fair enough.
My stepbrother-in-law, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so what I've always found interesting about Krysta is that Alicia would always bring up how Krysta has, from a very young age, prior to 6, maybe, I don't know, we'll get into that, has always been fascinated with teeth, right? And so, which is kind of an interesting thing for a kid to, no offense, but it's interesting. And so then pursues this passion in teeth, and now as a dental hygienist, although is focused more on the educational part of things. And what's super interesting too is that Krysta is very much a doer. You're very much a doer. So you do all these different things, and I saw the other day that you're like now getting into DJ realm, and content creation has been a big part of your life. And so well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So yeah, it's just, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Krysta?
Oh man, I always say I'm like a very multifaceted human. I feel like when it comes to who I am, I always like, I'm just Krysta. But then there's so many nitty-gritty details behind that. So I mean, I'm Krysta. I'm literally a tooth obsessed. I guess I'm like I call myself the tooth fairy. And my DJ name, as we were talking about this earlier, is Tandfe, which means tooth fairy in Swedish. But I'm, you talked about loving teeth since I was 3 years old. And I don't know, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, did I just go to the dentist and love the experience and just as a kid say I wanted to be a dentist, or like I wanted to be in the dental field, and everyone else around me ran with that? Or was it something that I still, I was fascinated by? And I think it was a little bit of both, honestly. But I, at 3 years old, fell in love with the dentist. I liked the smell, I liked the taste. It was just like a sensory thing for me. And so I did that, and I was pursuing that passion since I was a little kid. So in my whole family, everyone was joking. They're like, Krysta wants to be a dentist. I was like the elf in Rudolph. And so as I got older, everything, I pursued being a dental hygienist. And then I got my degree, started working full-time as a hygienist, loved that. But then also, I grew up in a really musical family. So I was like, there's other things I want to do. I love performance. I love the arts. But I always was like, I started to do the grind. You do the 9 to 5. You work. It's fun. And then about a year ago, my life completely, we'll get into it a little bit later, but my life completely just took a 360. And I was really passionate about sales. I was passionate about content creation, and I started posting on TikTok. And when I started posting on TikTok and I was teaching people how to better their lives, I thought I was going to be like a personal development person. And one day I taught people how to brush their teeth, and it blew up, and all of a sudden it went viral, and I was like, wait, there's something to this. So I decided that if I want to educate people, I want to educate the masses on how to take care of themselves, I can make such an impact by using social media. And then a year later, after that TikTok happened, now I'm a full-time content creator, and I teach people online how to take care of themselves. And also now, I'm able to pursue my passions because I'm not doing the 9 to 5 grind as I used to. Even though I do miss my patients and love patient care, I think that I'm able to reach a broader spectrum by teaching people how to take care of themselves online and making a larger impact. And so then I decided to start DJing. So I taught myself how to DJ, and I just had my first gig a couple days ago, and that's only been about 3 months, and I've loved it. So yeah, that's kind of about me in a really roundabout way. I've got a lot to me, but yeah, that's kind of Krysta in a nutshell. But I just love teeth, so yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think one, loving the experience at a dentist. I mean, that's pretty rare.
Yeah, no.
So I'm reminded of my experience as a kid in the dentist, and I really only remember that my dentist's wife was the dental hygienist, and I only learned that later, of course, because I didn't know the concept of the wife, but she had the biggest hands. I remember that as a kid being like, Mom, this is not fun. Like, why does this woman's hands have to be in my mouth? She was like, no, you got to go to the dentist every 6 months. We're going to do this thing and consistently. And she was great about it. But I always remember that. So thankfully that didn't happen for you. Thankfully it was different.
Yeah, it was such a really interesting experience because there were some times I was there and it wasn't I didn't take care of my teeth really well as a kid, which is funny because you'd think I was obsessed with them. I had really bad bleeding gums, gingivitis, and I didn't floss ever, and I was so obsessed with the concept of taking care of teeth one day. And then also I think I got to make people smile because I've kind of always been the comic relief of the family sometimes. So for me, I like to make people smile and I love to have conversations with people. And it was I joked, I was like, well, I don't get to, I don't get to let them talk. I get to talk the whole time. And so I'm it was just something that I think just being able to have conversations, but I didn't have the big hands, the problem, so that's good. But oh my gosh, it was such a wild, great experience for me. I never had cavities as a kid until I got older though, so it wasn't traumatizing. But the pediatric dentist I went to had video games and stuff too, so it was the coolest place to be. So I don't know, I think it's crazy how an experience can shape where you go in life, your perception of it, because I've loved the dentist ever since I was a kid, and then was this is where I want to go in my life because of that really cool dental office. So
yeah, and you bring up a good point. It is remarkable how one tiny experience, even when you're 2, 3, can then dictate the path for you. And in a lot of ways, following that path leads to other things, but it is important that you do that initial path and listen to what it is that you really are fascinated about. And so, yeah, I think one of the most interesting topics about you is how you did that. And I think a lot of kids and younger adults and teenagers and whatnot, I think that they have a lot of passions, but it's drowned out by everything else, or there's a lot of fear in that, or ooh, it doesn't look like that's a good monetary kind of economic decision, and so then people end up not following what actually is interesting to them, and that's a big mistake. And then they find out much later on in life that, hey, maybe I should do that thing. But what you did was kind of naturally the opposite. You kind of just did your thing, and you were true to yourself. And so I think that's super cool about you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too, because I feel when it comes to people following their paths, especially young people, I know there's a lot of that noise, and they're oh, luckily being a dental hygienist is a good career decision. It's everybody's oh, that's they're in healthcare, they make good money. So I think if I had said, I don't know, I don't even know what's, my sister, perfect example. My sister went to art school, and the whole family and people around her were are you sure about that? For me, and now she's an architect, so I'm yeah, she made great decisions for herself, and she's living her passions. And I think sometimes that, that noise and that fear of oh, it's not a good, it's not going to be a well-paying job, but I'm I would rather do my passion and get paid less, because it's money really isn't everything if you're not happy. And I think I'd rather follow a passion and get paid less than do something that's just gonna get me by, and then you're just kind of living passively. And I see way too many of my friends doing that. I see people in my life doing that all the time, and it's well, yeah, that's the good career move. But then you get to being, I'm not in my 40s or 50s, but one day I see people, family friends that they all of a sudden just realize that they've been just living just paycheck to paycheck, life to life, they've just been living their life so status quo. And then I hear at the end of, you hear stories about people on their deathbeds, and they're I didn't live my life, and that's my biggest regret. And that's my biggest fear, is getting to the end of my life and being I didn't live it. And so I think that's why I just was yeah, we're just gonna go for whatever my passions follow. It is what it is. Yeah.
I think it's, well, number one, did you know that only 2 out of every 10 people say when asked that they're doing something they're passionate about?
Really?
Only 2 out of every 10.
That's not a good statistic.
That's not a good statistic,
and
right?
people aren't that, and that goes to show why are people so unhappy with life?
The irony is, it's the 10 out of 10 are teaching the next group of people the way to live, right? We're learning from the people before, and they're not prioritizing their passion. So they're teaching that money is more important, that we have to do these things that are more important. And you guys both hit on it already, and it's been something that's been in my mind for a while. It's almost okay to prioritize money over passion, right? We're saying, that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
But for you, while you went that direction and you got to go down this road of passion and become a dental hygienist, now you are still living your passion by teaching people how to do the things around teeth.
Yeah.
And I think so often like that, and you even mentioned like your sister, she wanted to go to art school. Is that a great idea? Well, for me, no, it's not a great idea because I'm not passionate about art. But for her, yes, because now she's an architect, right? And now she's not only doing the things she's passionate about, but she's making money, right? And I think when we think about passion, like I love to wrestle, right?
Yeah.
No, money does not come from wrestling, but I get to teach kids to wrestle now, and that makes money, right? And there's ways to think about following your passion that will eventually make money, but when we learn from people that have just shut that out, nope, that's not the way to do it. You got to learn about money first, and then you can go from your passion. We never get there. We never think about all these other avenues that it can create. So I love hearing the story, and I love that now you have expanded to a new passion, right? Music. And you kind of talked a little bit about your family's always been into music.
So growing up, my family had a recording studio in our basement. So my mom's a singer, my dad's a piano player, my sister's a singer, I'm a singer, but like we always had music around us. And so for me, music was always a big part of my life. We did musical theater growing up, and my sister, as she's, as I said, she's an architect. She also is in musical theater performances now. Like she got to be back on stage. She's extremely talented. My mom, even though she works in the medical field, is in a band. And then my dad has a baby grand piano in his living room and just plays and still is able to play piano and just play music. And he's actually with my little sister. They're starting to produce again. Like they're looking into that. And I was like, wait, all of these different avenues, like I see my family still pursuing these other passions and having so much fun with them. And I was like, I want to do something with music. Like I love music. I can hear songs in my head and I can hear other songs and what like the keys are and how everything matches. And I also love like EDM. I love the EDM scene. I love electronic dance music. I love to go out. I love festivals. I love to dance. And I still do teach dance too. And I was like, wait, one of my best friends goes, Krysta, you should be a DJ. And I was like, no. I was like, wait a second. And then I started more and more getting involved in that music scene. And I was like, I started to make friends who were DJs. And I was like, wait, I could do this. And so, I decided 3 months ago I was going to teach myself how to DJ, and I did. And I mean, I think the biggest thing was I had my first gig. I was terrified, which I don't get a lot of stage fright. Growing up on stage didn't bother me, but I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to make sure everyone's having a good time. And it's like, and then I just got up there and I was like, this is so much fun. And it's something I don't know if I could see myself doing like massive scale, but I do like to just like entertain and help and just have a good time. And I think it allows me to incorporate my love for dance, music, and also being able to make something like I always say it's like creating musical fusion, but it's just like mixing things together so it just like flows, but then everyone has such a good experience too. It's like creating almost a whole entire environment. So I just started doing that for fun, and I think I was just, everyone's like, you just try so many things, but I'm like, I'm just not afraid to just fail. I'm just gonna go for it, and if it doesn't work, I just pivot and I do something else, and then like I just pivot a bunch of times until I figure out something that I like. And I think that's what I've done that in my career too. So it's like, just it is what it is.
Amazing.
I'm like, so I love music though. It's amazing.
I think that's so cool. And even something like that, DJ, it's a good example. Like you could learn to DJ and probably become hyper monetary successful, but I think that would stop a lot of people because it would take some time to get there. It would take a lot of work to get there, and chances of failure are probably quite high, but nonetheless, you do it anyways, and you find what then that leads to. And you had brought up something very interesting that had me thinking about a statistic that most people choose their careers and what they study in college and beyond high school for monetary purposes, and that's actually it's only gotten worse. And I didn't expect myself to bring up the statistics. So I don't have it exactly locked in, but as far as I can remember, studies on students entering college have found that it used to, like maybe in the 90s, be 20% of people would go to college to find their their career for monetary purposes. Like they only focused on the financial gain. And now, up to recent years, that's up to 80% of entering students into college go to college and study what they study purely out of monetary needs. And I think that's kind of sad.
It really is. And you can also make money like there's so many ways to make money these days. Like if you really want to make money, that's social media is one of the easiest ways to make money right now. And people, I think people are afraid of it, but I'm like, there's such a need for like there's an avenue. If you find a will, there's a way. Like there always is. And it's something that I think is really sad that people, they shy away from it, but like you can do anything. I mean, you can create a podcast. Like you can really, it's like there's things you can do. And I think a lot of people, they focus so much on the dollar sign and they focus so much on, I think a lot of it becomes, I mean, yes, it feels like it's kind of selfish, but I feel like the moment you start doing things like out of giving to others, even though you don't really realize it, like that's where the joy comes in, but that's also like I find that there is some sort of monetary value to that in some way, shape, or form.
Sure, yeah. Providing value, and I think there's humility in recognizing that when you do something new for the first time, maybe you don't provide a ton of value, but that's the only way to get to the point of providing value is by doing the thing. You can't, you can only read and watch so many DJs before it becomes, it's like redundant. You have to go there and you have to do it and you have to practice in public in a lot of ways. And so that's what people fear is this like practicing in public, and whether that's writing, DJing, content creation, I think that's super important for people. So talk to us about the first like video, because I think there was a video that I'm thinking of on TikTok where it was like kind of your first one that blew up. Like, tell me about that.
So it was one day I was just like, I had been talking to a friend and they asked me like a question about how to use a water flosser or something, and I was like, you know what? I'm like, I teach people how to brush their teeth. Like I'll go to the dental office, or like when I was at work, I'd be like, okay, here's a model. Like this is how you brush your teeth correctly. And so many people, I was like, wait, you know what? Let's just make a video for fun. I'm like, and it was started off as like, so many people don't know how to brush your teeth with an electric toothbrush. It's like, I'm going to show you how. And it was just a day, I think I remember it was like a day in January. And it was the worst quality video ever. It wasn't good. Like, it wasn't like it was this like outstanding production. I just was in my bathroom. The lighting was terrible. And like, I just brushed my teeth and taught people how to use an electric toothbrush and how to like, you hold it, you don't scrub with it. And I just did a few things. And then the biggest thing for people was I was like, oh, and you spit your toothpaste out, you don't rinse it. Cause it's like, you want it to stay on your teeth for about 30 minutes. And it was like, I taught people how, like, I changed their life. And so many people are like, I did not know this. And I was like, oh, like people actually don't know how to use a toothbrush. What else don't people know? Like if I have this whole brain full of knowledge, I'm like, I guess there's something that people don't know how to do. Like just because I went to dental hygiene school, not everyone has access to either a hygienist, and also a lot of people don't have access to dental care, especially around the world. It's especially in the United States, like it's not included in our, medical billing system. Like you have to have separate insurance. It's expensive, and a lot of people don't have access to it. And I was like, wait, if I could teach, like, they say that thing, like you teach a man to fish, or like you feed somebody, or like I can't think of the quote right now, like the one you can like teach them how to fish, and you like feed them for like, I'm like, you teach somebody how to brush your teeth, you could save them so much money. And I'm like, and it also could save their health, it could help their health. And so I was like, wait, there's something here. So I started to make more videos, and a lot of the videos, like I started TikTok like a couple months prior, none of my videos took off. Like I had done social selling for years. Like I had been doing stuff on social media for about like 5-6 years, like selling other products and things and like talking about things. So I knew how to talk in front of a camera, but nothing really took off. It wasn't big until I made that video, and then all of a sudden it started going viral. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is something. So then the next video that I made about taking care of your teeth started blowing up, and I was like, people need this and people are looking for it. So what else can I do? And so as I started to make those videos and educate people, that's where it started to become, like I started to get followers, and I was able to build sort of my own brand in a way of like myself. And then brands started reaching out to me, and I started to have brand deals, and I started to be able to sell products and connect with brands. And I was like, it changed my life. Like it really, I'm like, TikTok changed my life. And it's so crazy how one platform all of a sudden is my full-time career. Because as that was growing, I was doing that on the side very part-time, still working full-time. And I was in the middle of a divorce, so like that was crazy. So I was like traveling, I was driving about 2 hours to work every day and back. And I was living at my mom's, and all of a sudden, and like I wasn't financially stable at the time. I was literally like paycheck to paycheck. And then I had very little to my name. I didn't leave my marriage because I was the breadwinner. Like I just literally was like, you know what? We're doing this. And I ended up doing the commute. I was like, this is temporary, making the TikToks on the side. And my life took a full 360 where then it financially, like I took off. I was able to live on my own. I was able to function. I was able to pay off my bills, and like because of TikTok and because of content creation and because of that concept of helping other people, it like came back to me tenfold. And so, yeah, it was kind of a crazy sort of whirlwind of a year. And then it's, built up a lot. I got like 160,000 followers or something. Like there's brands that I talk to regularly, and now I sell other products on there, and they have a shopping platform, and it's just created so much opportunity. And because I can go full time, I now was able to take a step back from the clinical world, and like it's crazy. And now I just work for myself, and I wake up when I want, and I do the things I want. And I never thought, like I always dreamt of that life, and I was like, that's something I feel like I just used to say I would retire by the time I was 30. And so when I hit 31 and was able to do it, I was like, wait, that's not too bad for like, creating that concept and actually running with it. So yeah, that's like, it's just wild to me, like living the life that my brain has visualized for a while. And
So just for numbers purposes, do you remember how many views that first like video got?
It was at like probably, I mean, if I look at it now, it's probably at like 5 million or something.
Wow.
But it's not the highest amount of views I've gotten.
What's the highest?
22 million.
Wow.
What was that one on?
Yeah, that one is about teeth whitening, and there's a product attached to it too. It's about teeth whitening strips that I use, and I was just one day I was like comparing the shade. I was like, oh, you know what? Like my teeth are really white, and I've been using whitening for years, so I'm not really the best. When I talk about it, I'm like, look, I've whitened my teeth for years. Like I've had a good baseline. They whiten quickly, but it's a very simple process. It's hydrogen peroxide. And I just showed the white strips, and yeah, it has 22 million views. It's crazy. I'm like, the concept of conceptualizing 22 million people,
right.
I'm like, that's wild to me.
That is
yeah,
wild.
so it's really cool to just see that. Wow. And yeah, I just think about it, and I don't really get noticed in public, but I've gotten at dental conventions, I've had people like come up to me and like ask for my picture.
That's
like,
so funny.
So weird.
Wow.
It's weird. I'm like, I'm just Krysta. Like as I said earlier, I'm just Krysta. But yeah, it's been a really cool experience to have, and to be able to really impact a lot of people at such a large scale.
Well, it's funny. A little bit of vulnerability as I say this, but as I pick up my electric toothbrush, I literally like replay like, okay, for the record, this first video, and I think I watched this one, I don't know when it came out or something, but Krysta was saying, okay, you hold your electric toothbrush on each tooth for like however long, 10
3 seconds. Like, yeah, you just kind of like go around tooth by tooth.
You don't scrub, you like hold it there. I'm like, oh. Duh.
Well, yeah, it's like the thing is we're taught to brush our teeth with a manual toothbrush when we're kids. Yeah. So when you get an electric toothbrush, you think it's the same thing, but you don't scrub with them. Like I always say, you're not cleaning grout. Like it's, a plaque or a biofilm is not that hard to remove. You just have to be really gentle because the vibrations do the work. And I'm like, you do the inside, the outside, and the chewing surface. But then when I started to see comments of people saying, I didn't know you were supposed to brush the insides of your teeth, I was like,
whoa.
Oh. Okay. See, these are things that people just don't know. Like it's not like some people just don't have that education. And so it's like, oh wow, I taught somebody that the insides of their teeth are areas you clean. That could change their life in some way. And even with water flossing and like how to use a water flosser. And my whole concept was like, there's dental tools out there. There's floss, there's water flossers. They're all, there's so much available to people. I wanted people to learn how to use them correctly because dental offices, like, they'll be like, no, don't use a floss pick because floss is better. I'm like, look, if you're going to clean between your teeth, I could care less what you use.
Right.
You could use a piece of hay. I could care less.
Yeah,
but like, use something, and here's how to use it correctly. Instead of just saying, don't use it at all. I'm like, okay, there's some things I still would advise against, like those ultrasonic cleaners that people use themselves. I'm like, those ones, that's a little sketchy. Because that's like, I went to school for that. Like I went to school to learn how to use instruments, but, or like the little picks that people buy. But floss, toothbrush, dental floss, like whatever you want to use. I'm like, as long as you're cleaning your teeth, mouthwash, we can get into that, but like it's, whatever you use, like just know how to use it correctly and know how to use it safely so you're not causing more damage to your teeth and gums. And that's kind of where I was at.
Isn't there some correlation now between poor dental hygiene and heart disease?
Yeah, there's a correlation between poor dental hygiene and heart disease. Alzheimer increases your risk of inflammation systemically, cancers, erectile dysfunction, any sort of autoimmune conditions can actually get exacerbated through inflammation in the mouth, because we know inflammation, it elevates inflammation. It's not just localized. Your whole entire inflammatory process is elevated when you have inflammation. So bleeding gums is a sign of inflammation in the body. So if your gums bleed, healthy gums don't bleed, first of all. That's a big statement, but like they don't. So it's like when you have bleeding here, it means that there's something like your inflammatory process is going on because your body's trying to heal something. Because like if you think about it, like if it was like different, if we were washing our hands and they just sporadically were bleeding all the time, we'd all be concerned. We'd be like, wow, this is not a good idea. Like this is bad. But like people in our mouth, we don't think of it. But yeah, when there's bacteria, the body has an immune response, sends the white blood cells to that area, sends red blood cells to that area, creates inflammation, and expands the capillaries right at the gum tissue. As soon as you like any sort of like provocation or anything like that, that's when it bleeds, because it's the capillaries are swollen because the blood flow is trying to help clean up the inflammation or like the bacteria there.
Wow.
But not all bacteria is bad either, though. So that's the one thing in the mouth is that there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. But the dental world still thinks we need to sterilize the mouth, and that's a whole. I could go down a rabbit hole.
I'd like to hear a little more of that, because
Yeah.
I recently was talking about mouthwash with somebody.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't like the way that it made me feel. And it made me feel like it was taking away all of the stuff that I know could be protecting me. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Do you believe that we didn't talk about those questions? I sent her 2 questions.
Yeah.
We're like, I think these are topics. You just hit them both.
Yeah.
Really?
We're on the same wavelength. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, please, mouthwash.
Yeah, so mouthwash,
That's funny.
I think, so first of all, mouthwash, there's so many different mouthwashes out there, first of all. If they are alcohol-based, they are like the worst thing for your mouth, I think. Because alcohol-based mouthwash is like hand sanitizer. And we always say hand sanitizer, look what it does to your hands. First of all, it makes them cracked, it makes them like dry, and it gets rid of the entire microbiome on your hands, which they're saying it's killing the good and the bad. Which we have, we are more bacteria than we are cells in our body. So we have bacteria in our mouth. There's the good bacteria, the protective bacteria. We call it commensal bacteria. It's actually meant to be in our mouth and support our teeth and support the good processes and help promote health in our mouth. And then there's the bacteria that's more pathogenic. Some of the bacteria actually is good until it's in abundance, so then it becomes pathogenic. Like if you have too much of it, it's like too much of a good thing, like, and we also have yeast going around in our mouth. We have viruses going around in our mouth. So bleeding gums isn't just from bacteria, it can also be from yeast and viruses as well. So when we use mouthwash, there's a whole conversation about like nitric oxide producing bacteria too. Nitric oxide is produced in your sinuses and produced on the back of your tongue. And we need that because we obviously need nitric oxide systemically to help dilate our blood vessels and to help our body healthier cardiovascularly as well. So we produce a lot of that in the nose and the back of the throat and the mouth. And so when we use mouthwash, first of all, if you're killing off all the good and the bad, there's nothing protecting your teeth really. And also, when you think about what hand sanitizer does to your hands, it's drying out your mouth, it's drying out your tissues. So a dry mouth is a more acidic mouth, and it creates more of a slew of issues. So a dry mouth can also mean you're higher risk for cavities, and because of the acidity. But then also, when it comes to dry mouth, I always think of like drying out your teeth too. Hypersensitivity, like dehydrated teeth are sensitive. So like when you think about swishing around with alcohol, which is like dehydrating all of your tissues in your teeth and killing everything, it's like, it's not good. There's some mouthwashes out there that are like xylitol based, for example. I love xylitol. It's a sugar alcohol. The bacteria in the mouth cannot digest it and ferment it. So what it does is it eats it, and instead of creating the byproduct, like it thinks it's sugar, usually when each bacteria eats sugar, it creates a byproduct that is acid, and that's what breaks down your teeth. But when this bacteria eats xylitol, it actually can't like process it, and it dies. So it kills off the bad bacteria and promotes good bacteria. So there's different types, but I always say mouthwash is, if you have bleeding gums, you have inflammation, you have active disease in the mouth, yeah, mouthwash is a good thing to do for about like 2 weeks. After that, I always say you don't need to use it all the time. Also, if you have bad breath, if you have inflammation, if you have bleeding, there's clearly something going on because your breath is not supposed to smell and you're not supposed to have bleeding gums. And like if you don't have bleeding gums and you don't have inflammation, you don't need to use mouthwash all the time. It's kind of like a Band-Aid but if you have active disease, then I always say like give it 2 weeks, and then if that goes away, great. But if it doesn't, then there's clearly a different issue going on. Wow. Yeah, so that's how I look at it. But I'm a big brush twice a day. I do love oil pulling too, like coconut oil, or like I use a blend of oils, but that's a super holistic thing, and the dental world doesn't love it because they're like, oh, there's not enough research on it. I'm like, how many holistic things are there not enough research on? Like literally everything, because it's not money making. And let's be honest here, that's how I feel. It's not a really lucrative industry because it's coconut oil and like some other essential oils too. But it's been used, it's a great, like coconut oil has lauric acid in it, and lauric acid is a natural surfactant, softens the plaque, helps it be easier to remove, but it's not getting rid of all of this, like it's not completely eradicating your microbiome.
So you just put like coconut oil like on your gums?
So you swish around. So I use one that's from a brand that I'm like, we're best friends. But you swish around with it for, this one you use for 2 minutes. The original Ayurvedic way was like 30 minutes of swishing. So this one is like 2 minutes, you work your way up to 10. But if you want to, but like 2 minutes is their clinical effectiveness. But that can help just like, it's like a pre-rinse, and that's nice, and it's more gentle than some of these mouthwashes that just dry everything out.
I mean, you can feel it, like mouthwash. Like you use that alcohol base, and you're like, this feels awful.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we touched on that, because I had that lingering question too, because it almost seems intuitive once you start to understand more about the body and how it works. It almost seems intuitive that you probably don't want to kill everything in there, because there's good stuff. It's like you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater when you use mouthwash.
Exactly.
Like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe it was longer actually, but I got this like new toothbrush, and it was like a big boy electronic one, and it did a water pick kind of thing, and man, first time I used that, it was an absolute bloodbath.
Yep.
It was a bloodbath in there. And so you're saying that's not normal?
As that healthy gums don't bleed. And I get the people that are like, well, I'm on blood thinners. I'm like, yeah, but your gums wouldn't bleed if they're not inflamed.
Right,
like they don't bleed. Like your blood's just thinner. Like it's not like it's causing the bleeding to happen. But yeah, so it's because you have the inflammation there. And so that's where it's actually early signs of disease. If you're doing all of your home care correctly and you have very little, like, you're doing everything you can, we always say there's got to be a systemic component going on. If your gums are overall good but they're bleeding, it's like, wait, there's definitely a direct correlation to something else that could be going on. A lot of the times, like a lot of more functional doctors will send people, if they can't get somebody's levels down, like their inflammatory levels down, they'll be like, when was the last time you saw the dentist? Because that's going to help with the inflammation too. And there's people they have crazy stories, and you hear things all the time, but like some people, like their rheumatoid arthritis is easier to manage because they finally got the inflammation down in their mouth, and it's helping with their other systemic diseases. And like, it's so cool to see. But also, one of the number one directly like correlated diseases with the mouth is actually insulin resistance. You can see it in the mouth before it happens anywhere else with bleeding gums.
Really?
Yeah. So it's crazy because I've had patients that, diabetes and periodontal disease are related. So if you can't control your diabetes, your periodontal disease is harder to control. And if you can't control your periodontal disease, it's actually harder to control your blood sugar. So they go hand in hand. So like having diabetic patients, like they have to make sure that they're seeing their dentist. Yeah.
It's interesting because, inflammation, a little bit of a buzzword these days, but I think that's because what they're now finding out for most chronic disease processes, even, and this is maybe potentially triggering, but it is an ongoing area of research, they're even finding that mental health, mental health is potentially the result of neural inflammation. And so then it gets you thinking, well, because of correlations like that almost like, they make sense, but also, when you have periodontal disease and then you're higher risk for heart disease, or you have higher risk for diabetes, it's like, sure, there's probably more to that connection, but the basis is that something isn't functioning right. There's something wrong, and that's providing this systemic kind of dysfunction that then the body then upregulates certain things, and we have negative acute phase proteins that then kind of change. And so I find that super interesting. What is like we're going to migrate off the dental, but because it's so interesting, what is like what's the regimen? What's the
So
trifecta?
the biggest thing that I would say to every person is tongue scrape. Scrape your tongue every morning, especially. Tongue scrape, floss with something, water. I'm a big tongue scrape, floss, water floss, brush, because I love water flossing. I think it's amazing. And then when you finish brushing, spit your toothpaste out, don't rinse it.
So this is in the morning you do, yeah. So
I do it both morning and evening. I floss morning and evening because,
tongue-
but especially at night, because right before bed is so important because your mouth at night becomes like this warm, dark, damp place, and it's like a harbor for bacteria, and bacteria loves warm, dark, damp places. So I always say give yourself a clean slate at night, and then in the morning you could just, if you needed to do something, it's just brushing and tongue scraping in the morning. But I always before bed is tongue scrape, floss, water floss, brush, and with brushing. But if you do that twice a day, if you water floss twice a day, your gums like perfect, pristine. I see more patients do that, and it really improves their overall health and like your overall oral hygiene.
Water floss like water pick, is that
Yeah.
the same thing?
Yeah, they just have more brands now, so Waterpik's just its own brand.
Oh, there.
So, yeah,
Oh, okay.
so-
Wow. Okay, cool.
So yeah, it's just that's the ideal regimen.
Wow,
But
amazing. Do you do that?
My brain has jumped someplace, and I apologize for
That's
our
okay.
audience. But so my wife has recently started listening to our podcasts, and we're on like podcasts like this is like number 28 or 29 or something. And like she got through like the first like 12, and then like started telling me like, hey, these are the things that you said on the podcast, or these are things that like Ryan said, and maybe you should talk to Ryan about this, like
Yeah.
your desire to eat ice cream right before bed, and like these are things she's been saying to me, and when she gets to this podcast, it's probably going to be on repeat on my like before bed. She's gonna be like, exactly what she said. Do that. Like, it's gonna be like, we're gonna go to episode 26.
Yeah.
This is what Krysta said to do. You said you agreed with it.
yes.
Go to the bathroom.
Also we are human, so I do take in the human aspect. Like
Yeah.
sometimes there are some nights, like I am obsessed with my teeth. Some nights I just brush my teeth and go to bed. Like it happens. We all do it, but like ideally, if you can do the regimen as much as possible, and if you don't get it to in the evening, do it in the morning, 1,000%. But try to do it twice a day. That's how I say. I'm like I think there is also a human aspect that we don't. I never say to my patients I expect perfection. I just expect you to do it as best as you can. Right. So I'm like, because I don't. I'm like, there's days where I'm like, I'm tired. I want to go to bed. Like,
Yeah.
but almost as much as possible, do what you can.
And so you say, just so I have it for my own self-serving needs, you're
Yes.
saying tongue scrape, floss, brush.
Water floss.
Water floss.
Yeah,
Brush.
tongue scrape, floss, water floss, brush.
Is a water floss a good replacement for a regular floss?
I've seen it work for a lot of people. Some people, you can do that, and as long as your gums aren't bleeding at your dental visits, then you're good. But some people need the extra floss. So I do both. I'm also like very prone to getting bleeding gums. I don't know why.
How fast can you repair possible like periodontal disease or early stages of?
So any gingivitis, it's inflammation, 2 weeks of consistency. It
Really?
can reverse gingivitis. Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen it it's very possible. And actually some people after a couple days. I mean, obviously it depends on like your age and how well you heal. But a lot of the times, and there are other contributing factors. Like if you breathe through your mouth, you are much more like it's going to be a harder time to get your
Yeah.
gums under control. And that's a whole,
that's
we
a
might have to do a
whole-
whole other podcast part two,
Yeah.
because like nasal breathing and sleep are such a big part of inflammation, and breathing through your mouth causes a lot of problems in the mouth, but it causes a lot of problems systemically too. So like there's a whole other side of dentistry that dentistry's finally catching up with, which is like airway and looking at things and catching things with patients, sleep apnea, mouth breathing, early stages of stuff like that. We catch it early, and we're seeing it even in kids, being able to catch mouth breathing and all these other issues in kids early, and facial development and jaw development, because it starts when you're young, and if you don't catch it then, it's just like a one-way ticket to sleep apnea one day. So so like breathing through your mouth, breathing through your nose, and even the way the tongue is placed as a kid, and that because your tongue's your best palate expander when you're a kid, and you can prevent kids from needing braces, because even as humans, our faces are changing, our jaws and airways are getting smaller because of habits, and so people, we're getting unhealthier.
Right.
And so, it's crazy.
Have you ever read the book Breathe by James
I've
Nestor?
never read Breathe. I've just read The Oxygen Advantage, but I've heard great things about Breathe.
Yeah, I think
and
you'd find that very
I've heard great things. So, Yeah, it's a whole nother. We could, we might have to do a part two
No,
to get into that.
Well, I would love to,
yeah.
but okay. So then you have this like passion that you've kind of lived out, and super interesting. But now you're kind of you were then speaking of a lot of like different. I don't know if I would call them spiritual, but somewhat semi-spiritual. You talk about visualization, you talk about breathing, you talk about life changes, and you seem to have no fear to do the things that people often have fear with. Although maybe that's not even the right way to say it. Maybe it is that you do the things in the presence of fear. So what is it?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through so much in my life in very, very short period of time. I actually used to be terrified. Like, I used to be the people pleaser. I used to be very codependent. I used to be very anxious and I kind of let myself get that way. And I think that a lot of the times, this could be very controversial, but like, I truly take ownership for every experience that I've had. Like, I don't blame others for my anxiety or why things happen. I'm like, I chose that feeling and that emotion in that moment. And even though it was harder to control, I'm like, I was in a space where I just like, for me, I was like, okay, I've had that fear, I've had that anxiety, and I was very fearful for a very long time. And there was actually an exercise I did that kind of changed everything for me. I broke a board. I was in this group that we were doing this sort of exercise where you write your fears on one side and you write what you're overcoming on the other side, and then you break it. And I allowed the experience to be real for me, and I actually was like, you know what? I'm gonna break this board. Like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna overcome these things. It was like, I couldn't even tell you how, like, it was so profound. I broke down before, I like broke down crying, and I was obviously fearful I wasn't gonna be able to break it. Like, what are the people in the room gonna think if I can't, blah, blah, blah. But like, I broke through it, and I had a lot of things written on there, and I have the board still that were like, fear of other people's judgment, fear of fear of my husband's judgment, my sister's judgment, my like fear of being alone was actually a huge fear of mine. I was terrified of being alone. And intuitively, I've always known that I was meant for, like, I felt like I've always had like these big dreams and meant for more. And I didn't feel like in my life something wasn't right, and I wasn't happy. And I was like, okay, the only person that is in control of getting me out of into my happiness is me. And I kind of just flipped my life on its head, like turned it over. And about a year later, after breaking that board, I did a lot of work on myself, and I gained the confidence to say, like, I'm not happy in my marriage. And that was really tough because, like, that's a big thing. And I mean, there's such a stigma. I lost so many friends. Like, I was just like, if I'm going to be happy, like, I have to do things that work best for me. And I think people are scared of what other people are going to think, but they never are like, I didn't want to live the next 30 years of my life in not being happy. I couldn't do it. I was more fearful of that. And I think that's the thing, is like, being in presence of fear, I just kind of did things. Like, I just was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And yeah, I kind of threw my life up on its head, but then I truly trusted more in my intuition finally than anything else. Like, my gut was telling me a lot of things that I used to just like try to out logic. And I truly believe in intuition. And I was like, yeah, if my gut's saying this, like, okay, just do it, because it has never steered me in the wrong place. And so I made some really tough life decisions, and I knew that somebody has to be the bad guy. I had to sort of get over that fear of other people's judgment. And because it's every time I get fearful of other people, I never get to live into my greatness. And every time I just overcome it, and I'm like, you know what, forget it. I'm either having the best time of my life, I'm very happy, and I'm like, wait, we're all the only people in the room that are thinking about you are yourself. Like, when you think about other people judging you, like, really? No one's judging you. We're all more concerned about who's thinking about us, and none of us are really thinking about like each other. And like, if somebody's judging you, like, that's on them anyways. Right. So I started to like dive into personal growth. I stopped drinking or doing anything for like a couple months actually. I just started working on myself, going to therapy, and like really just being like, okay, if I'm gonna make this decision, I'm going to better myself in such a way that I'm gonna be the best version of me, and I will be able to get through anything. I started solo traveling too, which was really nerve-wracking because I was fearful of being alone. And I started to lean into the things that I was fearful of, and I was like, wait, when you do the things you're fearful of, they're less scary. Right. Like, you're like, okay, this is actually what's created more growth in my life than like just sitting on the sidelines being like, oh, like if I do that, like my life's gonna blow up. Like, I see so many people being fearful of just living and just doing the things, like even down to like the fear of eating the wrong food, or like the fear of I don't know, like the fear of I mean, there's like a fear of dying, but they say the happiest people in the world are aware of their own death. Like they're aware of their mortality. So I have an app that tells me every day that I'm gonna die. And I'm like, that means I get to live. And so there's just such a difference when you sit there and you're like, instead of saying like, I'm not gonna do these things, like I'm so afraid, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do these things because I'm afraid, because that's gonna grow me as a person. And if I mess up or if something bad happens, I trust myself. And like, that's what being alone has given me, like the trust in myself again, which I didn't have. I was like always judging my friends. I was always nervous, like I never could be alone. And then now I live by myself and I love it. Like it's the best thing in the world. But through that, you know, my friends all, you know, even dating, like I got back into the dating pool and my friends were like, you fit like 10 years of dating, I feel like in a year. And I like met someone who my boyfriend now is amazing. And like, it's just one of those things that I just was like, I'm not afraid to fail a relationship. I'm not afraid to have my heart broken, because I'd rather feel it and be a human and have the emotion and have the feeling than just sit there and avoid it all. I'm like, I'd rather experience life and experience the lows, because then the highs get that much better. So like, that's where I started to just like go all in on this experience of life. I visualize, I've manifested more things in my life than I can even say. And I'm like, I'm a true believer in it. It's like, you see it, you picture it, but you have to take the action towards it too. Right. Because people will be like, I'm gonna sit here and visualize like $1 million. I'm like, yeah, but if you don't do anything after that, yeah, the $1 million, sure, like that, I've seen maybe some cool things happen, but like you have to take the action towards your visualizations. And like little steps. And I feel like energy in the universe always guides me in a way, or my intuition is always guiding me towards my visualizations. But I always am like, if I need to learn a lesson, I learn the lesson 1 million times, and like I won't be able to like pass go until I learn the lesson that I'm supposed to learn in that sort of journey. Right. So I've kind of just like let life guide me, but then not be afraid to like let life just do its thing. Yeah. So yeah, I'm like very much just living as out loud as I can. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, and it you're so right too, because everything happens in such little steps, right? It's like we all, you know, with the manifestation, the $1 million kind of thing, people just expect, okay, it's just gonna show up right there. You know, so I'm gonna walk by and it's gonna be hidden in the bush and I'm gonna find the $1 million. But you know, unfortunately, that's not how it works. You know, life happens in very short steps, and so you know, it's these little small wins, it's these little small actions, such as, you know, doing the DJ event, right? Like how, you know, it is a small action, the first thing, or posting the videos, or posting a series of videos, right? Yeah. And then waiting to see, not necessarily even waiting, but just letting it happen, letting things happen. And you know, people want to take these big grand leaps, and that's just not really how it works often, right?
No, it certainly doesn't.
You climb a ladder one rung at a time. You don't jump to the top of the ladder. Like that's just, and you don't, you know, there's steps. And I think sometimes people are afraid that, like, you know, the downfall of the steps are like taking a couple steps and they're afraid that it's like, oh, we're going backwards. Right. And it's like, well, the reason you didn't go forward is you clearly have to learn something from this again. And sometimes people have to repeat, I mean, I see it a lot in relationships. Like you repeat the same problem over and over again until you find a way to figure it out. It's like, that's science. Like, it's like, you know, that's something you have to do over and over again, because clearly you haven't learned from it yet, or you haven't learned how to pivot from it or how to change something slightly. And I think that's the part where it's like, you kind of just have to like perfectly titrate things until it works, and then you can go to the next step. I feel like life's just kind of like a video game. Like you can't get to the next level until you figure out this level of your life. And I think that's how I've realized that, you know, all these things, whenever something goes wrong, I always tell myself, I'm like, oh, it's just temporary. I'm gonna get through it. I trust myself, and I've hit rock bottom before, and it was rough, but like I got myself out of it. So I'm like, if I can get myself out of that, I can get myself out of something else. And every time I'm in like a weird place, I feel like every time you have a setback, I forget where I learned it from, like you call it having a rubber butt. You just bounce back easier every time. Like you will eventually, like those little setbacks that felt like these massive mountains will feel like a molehill. Like it'll literally just feel like a little bump after a while, because you've worked through it so many times. So I
like that. Rubber butt.
It's having a rubber butt. You just bounce back.
Resilience.
Yeah, it's like, because that's what life is resilience. But then like, the more you become resilient, that's where you create the confidence too, because I think they go hand in hand. And I think so many people, they're like, oh, how are you so confident? You don't care what people think. I'm like, yeah, because one, I trusted myself. So like self-confidence comes from trusting yourself. But then also, I I failed a lot, and I knew that like bad things aren't going to happen, or I'm not going to get judged, or like even if I do, I'm like, I just knew that like, okay, if I'm going to do this, like I'm following my dreams and all my passions and my dreams are coming true. I don't like that's how I'm confident. Like I just kept on keeping my word to myself and just doing it until it actually has become a reality. So, yeah.
Oh, amazing. And so what are some of like the little practices that you do? I mean, we always talk about like the actionable steps, but I heard visualization. Do you have a process with that? Do you do breathing? Do you do meditation? Do you do journaling?
It depends. I do, when I was going through it, journaling was my like number one thing.
Yeah.
Like every morning, I actually read only like a few chapters of this book, The Artist's Way.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah, but that was the morning pages changed my life. Like you don't think about it. You just write 3 pages every single day of just your brain dump and not judging yourself for it. And I was like, that helped me so much. But then also I started to, so I don't have as much of a ritual as I used to, and I'm trying to get back to it because we fall off our rituals all the time. But my biggest one though is I have a playlist that is like some of my favorite artists. They're named Chris and Teeb, and it's a manifestation playlist. And they do like, it's almost like rapping, but it's all affirmations. And so these songs get stuck in my head a lot of the times, and it's all positive things like I wake up every day feeling good. Like everything is as it should be. Like I'll have to send it to you. They're so good.
Please.
But I made a playlist of that, and I would listen to it every single day when I was in the shower. I was like, yep. And like all the songs, and I started to send them to other people. There's one about like money, and it's played at the same frequency of money. Like I think it's like 888 hertz or something, that's abundance. And I listen to it. I swear I've listened to that and like biggest paycheck days or like things. It happened right before my first brand deal. Like it just all those. And my sister she just got a new job and she was listening to it the day she got like the offer. And I was like, there's some, it might seem a little woo woo to some people, but I'm like, hey, if it works, it works. I could care less like if it seems weird or not. But yeah, my manifestation playlist is my big one because it's like someone else saying the affirmations, but I'm just singing along and I'm like, but yeah, I'm affirming it. And I leave like dollars around my apartment, and I'll find them, and I'll be like, huh. I'm like, yeah, money comes easily and frequently. Like it's that's a thing. But I'm like, oh yeah, the money comes to me. Like it's just all these things where I have them around. Yeah. Sometimes I do workshops on the new moon. Like sometimes I do. I don't have any like specific regimen, but I also just practice talking nice to myself every single day. Wow. And I think that's the biggest thing is I'm positive and I'm kind to myself, and I think. And I'm gentle to myself as I would be to a friend. And instead of being so hard on yourself all the time and telling yourself you're not good enough, I did that far too long, and it got me nowhere. So I was like, okay, I'm going to treat myself like I'm a friend, and I'm going to tell myself I look great. I'm going to tell myself that things are going well and like you're doing awesome, and like that positive self-talk that I have has helped me get through so many things in my life. Like, when you run a race, if you say nice things to yourself, the race is a little less painful. Or like if you're doing, if you're saying nice things to yourself, whatever you're doing, it makes it just more enjoyable. But so many people still have that negative self-talk. And I think that if you treat yourself like a friend, or even looking at a baby picture of yourself and like putting it on the mirror and saying like, would you talk to that person like that? And I think those things for me have really made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you brought a lot of that up, because I think those are the little things that actually make a difference, right?
Yeah.
And people might say, yeah, that's woo-woo or that's whatever, and to each their own, but nonetheless, treating yourself almost as, and it's gonna sound bad, but treating yourself as almost as if you're like an animal, and these are behaviors, like the behavior of negative self-talk, the behavior of these beliefs that we cultivate. And so when you have like the strategy, putting money around, it doesn't matter, that you put that there. Your brain doesn't necessarily like, you find money, whoa, dopamine rush, I didn't remember I did that. Yeah. But that is cultivating a belief that's in there, and it just been not necessarily super prominent. Same thing with you treating yourself like a friend and saying, well, I am this, I am that, whatever. So many people don't do that. There's so many people who just have never said anything nice to themselves in their their mind, their the mental chatter is just not nice at all. And so when you take the time to actually cultivate some of that, well, that's the behavior. It's like, I think of like, my my dog is nuts. She's super food driven. And so like yesterday he got into like one of the treat bags that we had placed into like, it was like on a shelf or something. And so So he has these little rituals where he goes around to each room and he goes to where he's always found food. And so he's like kind of OCD, but he searches in those places and then he finds the treat, from yesterday, attacks that, we take it away, and then later that night, he goes to that place again. Like, let me just make sure there's no food over there. But that's the kind of thing that our brains also operate in that sense. We learn little subtle things and then we live it out. And so, when you take the time to actually do the journaling and do the affirmations and do those little kind of like the affirmations even through the Spotify, it does make a difference whether people want to believe it or not.
Oh, absolutely. And my favorite thing, I always tell my friends, I'm like, your brain actually, they've done studies, your brain doesn't know the difference between what your thoughts and your reality. So I was like, I thought that was so cool. I'm like, I'm going to hack life. Like, I'm literally going to hack life and be like, wait, my brain doesn't know the difference. I can live the best life ever. And I always tell myself and like how I kind of got to where I was at. I'm like, you think about the person you want to become, like the best version of you. And you can even chat GPT this. I had friends that are like, yeah, you think about who you want to be, and then you work your way backwards into like little things and little habits that person does. And like, if you need help with it, you can literally go to AI and say, this is what I want to be. And then they will give you a whole plan of like things you can do every day. So it's like, I do that. I just did that for everything that I do. I'm like, okay, if I want to be the healthiest version of myself, it's not going to be like go to the gym once and you're healthy. Like you have to, or like, choose what you're eating or like choose how you're thinking and you're talking to yourself. Like you have to work your way backwards. And so, but I'm like, I show up as that person. So if I'm like, I'm going to be Krysta the CEO, like I'm going to show up as Krysta the CEO. My energy is going to be there. I'm going to tell my brain I'm the CEO of something, but maybe it's not there yet. But that's the thing is like you show up as if, and then things fall into place. That's what the manifestation is like, it's you're creating an energy shift. And I'm such a believer in energy. Like you walk into a room, you can tell energy, whether, when you walk in the room, there's someone that you know that you just don't vibe with. You can feel it. Like you can feel that shift and you like purposely avoid that situation, or like you can tell them like everything's energy. So it's like whatever. And I'm like, if I'm going to cultivate good energy, I'm going to be that person that's like, I'm going to be the high vibrational person. And it hasn't steered me wrong. So I'm like, I'm going to roll with it. So yeah, it's something all about like creating that energy and just cultivating that and running with it. But yeah, it's crazy because it's like, it works. I know people say it's mumbo jumbo, but I'm like, if it works, it works.
Right. And what's the harm in believing that?
Yeah.
What's the harm in believing that affirmative talk is?
How does that not serve you?
Right. Well, it's the people who have the negative self-talk that think it's
the 80% of people not living their passion.
Exactly.
It's the same concept.
And it's the, that concept of, you can't versus you can. Like people love to tell people they can't do something. I love to be like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like I'm so excited. Let's try it. And I love. Do you guys like Dr. Joe Dispenza? I love him. But yeah, his whole concept of like, there was a great podcast. It was him and Ed Milet, and they were talking about how they've done studies where like when you start to like visualize and manifest and like the law of attraction, you become a magnet. Like you actually create a frequency that is magnetic, and it's like. There's studies now, like they're actually like, if somebody wants to prove it, like they're proving that the law of attraction is real. I truly believe, I'm like, honestly, it's just physics. Like we're just all living in physics, so.
You know what's so interesting? We just had a conversation with the one of the more rugged dudes we've had conversations with, and he, came from, like a broken home and kind of his own words, and a fighter, just like brawler, right? And you know what he's found out through that avenue, following his passion? The exact same things that you found out, right? You come from this like musical, kind of like, dentistry kind of route, and you guys are coming to the same conclusions. And it just so happens that many happy, successful people do find the same conclusion, that visualization and being kind to yourself and all these things are actually, the way, so to speak. And if you know one area, you kind of know the way. To know the way broadly is the way to know all things. And so I think that's so cool and
so crazy.
Success leaves clues.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does. I suppose it does.
Yeah, it always leaves clues. Like if you want, I always say, if you want to learn something, like you don't want to go to. I would say they never take advice from someone you. This quote's gonna get me. It's like, or never take advice from somebody's life you don't want to live, like be living. And it's like I started to realize that even with relationship advice, with friendship advice, with family advice, like if I don't want the life that you have, I will always listen and happily like receive, but the advice that I'm going to take and use for myself is going to be from someone who's living the life that I desire. Okay. And I started to really just like dive into, if I see something I like, okay, let's figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I feel like everything, all these concepts they are so simple. But I think people just, when we talk about the 80% and we talk about the people not living their lives and their success, I think the biggest thing for people is that they really, like they're addicted to the negativity.
Yeah.
It's a dopamine rush. I mean, a lot of us are addicted to, you see people who only watch the news or they only watch the negative things. They're addicted to that, and your brain that's a feeling you become addicted to, and breaking out of that cycle is like breaking an addiction.
It's fear driven.
Yeah.
Right. I talked to someone recently and they said to me, who would I be without my anxiety? Who would I be without my depression? Who would I be? And the thought of losing those things is actually more fearful for them than actually letting them go.
Yeah. And then when you start to let them go, the brain will find ways to bring them back, because it's like, this is normal. Like, this is our emotion. It's like, that is a hard cycle to break. Yeah. But it's like losing your identity because you identify it being so anxious is like, but it's like, imagine if you could be so calm, or you could have peace, or you could be happy. It's like, you can always say like, who would I be? But like, yeah, but is that who you want to be?
Right.
And I feel like there's that identity shift that people have to have, but some are just not willing to. And that's not my identity shift for you. Like, to me, that's not my decision for me to make for you. It's everything's so personal. And I think also people who live in fear, who live in anxiety, I see a lot of them being the last people to take accountability for their own selves.
Right.
And that is the moment you start taking accountability for your anxiety, even though it's scary, because I'm like, yeah, I actually realized there were some times where I allowed myself to go into a panic attack because of a certain situation. Sure. I allowed it.
There's a reason.
There's a reason. I was like, okay, I know it's happening, and I know the tools to get myself out of it, but right now I wanted attention from something else, and I wanted to feel loved and valued, and I wasn't. And so I allowed myself to have a panic attack. But taking ownership of the panic attack is probably it's kind of taboo, because people are like, no, it's, you gave me that fault. Anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not going, but I was like, no, that I chose the anxiety. I choose my emotions. I choose my anger. I choose my fear. I choose my happiness. But like they say, it's the definition you give it, because they say nervousness and excitement, it's the same feelings in the body. It's just the title you give it. So.
Well, you certainly choose the reaction, right? You certainly choose the action that comes from that. And so I appreciate that, kind of mindset where, the panic attack, sure, a lot of mental health, even when we talk about, like eating disorders and stuff, those things have served a role. Doesn't necessarily mean that it was, a good thing, but it did serve a role. And so, for some people, recognizing that their anxiety, their depression served a role, but do you want it to serve a role right now? And if not, then we need to take the actions that, step outside of that identity. People have such a hard time with identity, and they almost get mad about it when they hear those kinds of things, because probably because they subconsciously know that they're choosing it, but two, because they think that is an active choice, and in some ways it is, but in a lot of ways you can actively choose to become someone else, such as yourself. I mean, the living proof where you've done so many different things and you've lived so many different lives. A lot of who you are is just what you decide to be in that moment, and far too many people, use their life trying to make sense of it in their minds, like, oh, why am I doing this, and this happened to me because of that. It's like too many people are trying to make sense of it rather than just living their life and just doing what they feels right.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Let Them Fairy from Mel Robbins? Mm-hmm. My favorite thing in the entire world. And this is
bring me up to speed. What is this?
So it's kind of goes along with this, because like I feel like a lot of people's their feelings about the external really dictate their internal. And when I heard this quote, it was like the best thing in the world. It's like, just let them. Like, if somebody's going to be causing you issues, or is that you're going to let people be people, and how you choose to react to them is your choice. Like, people are going to be people. People are going to be angry. They're going to be sad. They're going to be like, they're going to judge you. They're going to, or like, they're not going to judge you, or like, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. You let them.
It's not your business.
And then how you choose to react is your, like, that is your control. So many people try to control everything. They try to control the people around them. And I tried to control situations in my life. And then once I let the world just be what it is, I found so much peace, and I just live by let them theory. So I'm like, yeah, just let them. And I think she's writing a book about it now too, which is great. So I'm excited. But you let people be people. Let everyone be themselves. And I think that's what's brought a lot of peace to me too, is like my anxiety got a lot less when I just recognized you are going to be that person, or you in this moment, that is who you are, that is what you're doing. That's my choice how I want to react to it. And once I took control of that's when I took control of my life, and I was like, wow, I choose the friends that I have. I choose the family that they are family, but like, I choose who I spend my time with. I get to choose that because that's what I can control. And I choose what I tolerate. I choose the boundaries I set. I let people just be themselves. And in my life, that's been the most freeing thing in my relationship. It's been about 4 months. And he gets to be him, and I get to be me. I'm not trying to change him. I think he's a wonderful person, and he's not trying to change me. And I think that was the most beautiful thing that I've experienced, is that we just really care about each other from just being two human beings that are existing. Like, I don't care if he's doing something, like, I don't need to know what he's doing 24/7. I don't need to know, like, I'm just letting him be him. And if there's something that I don't like, I choose to tolerate that now. And I'm like, okay, this is my choice to say, this is for me or this is not. And I've done that before. I've walked away from things when they were not for me. And yeah, it's scary, but like, once you start to realize that's with a job, that's with friends, I walked away from jobs that didn't serve me, and it was the best thing that I ever did. And I see people around me doing the same, and it's like, you don't have to, try to control the situation. If you just let it be what it is.
Right.
And then choose what you tolerate, and then move on, and then set your boundary, or if you want to make something work, you make something work, but that's your choice. So, and you can't blame the external anymore. It's like, that just gives you the utmost control of your life.
So interesting. Yeah, you actually can't control anything. Everything is subtly changing, whether you believe it or not. And to love change is probably the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah.
If everything is constantly changing, then why not love it?
Yeah. Just allow it to be what it is. So
You guys are touching upon this this Buddhist philosophy. I went to a Buddhist meditation on Monday, and this is all coming full circle again. Here it is Wednesday, and the concept of allow is the concept is that life is suffering, and we live in a body that craves good feeling, and we live with a mind that will actually lie to you. So you can't have those. You can't not suffer. So once you realize that it's all transient, all the thoughts, all the feelings, all the emotions, all the actions, all the things come and go. What suffering is caused by holding on to it, keeping it.
Yep.
And the more we can let go, the more we can let go, let them, let us, let the less we suffer.
It's the most beautiful and freeing thing.
And then you get to show up as just Krysta.
Exactly. So I couldn't explain myself because I'm just me. But
That's so great.
It really is such a profound realization. But also, there's so much beauty in suffering, or like in that sort of darkness. And I think a lot of people are so scared of it. That's why they don't live fully, because they're scared of that darkness. Because some people have been there before, and it is scary. Like, yeah, your low moments are your low moments, but I always, and I said this earlier, like I'd rather feel so deeply and experience life so deeply and be so sad. Like I've hit rock bottom. I've been crying on the floor. But now my highs and like my appreciation for my happiness, I have so much more of an appreciation because I was at that moment at one point. And I always say to people, I'm like, you will crawl out of it. Like, your rock bottom this isn't the end. Like, you can allow it, you can sit in it, you can stew in it, and like also feel your feelings, but like feel them fully. Allow yourself to feel them. So many people in this world too numb their feelings through whether it's substances or social media or like things like they love to numb, or even like I've seen people numb their feelings through aggressively working out and doing healthy things because they want to control and they don't want to feel. And I'm like, if you just feel and allow yourself to be fully present in that feeling and just embrace the suck that it is, and then you get out of it and then you release it. And like, I don't hold grudges. I don't like, if somebody's wronged me, I don't even care. I'm like that, and there's a difference there because I'm like, yeah, sure, they've wronged me, like, but they did whatever was best for them in that moment. Okay, what can I control for that? Like, I can't. So yeah, it's like you allow it, and it's just you choose what you tolerate. But that's it's beautiful. Like, there's so much beauty in suffering, but then like coming out on the other side of it is really special. So.
Yeah. It almost reminds me of, we had Lauren Folan a little while, we actually had her twice on the podcast, and she's kind of like a mindfulness teacher, to put it lightly, she's up there when it comes to that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, she talks a lot about how even these feelings that we label as negative are just normal feelings, and so she'll sit there with those kind of negative emotions and just be like, what does this actually feel like? Is this, what is sadness? What does that actually feel like in the body as a pattern of energy? And I think that's kind of cool because it doesn't attach the story to the, so kind of what I touched on, like we're trying to make, if you try to make sense of the sadness, then that's where things just get out of hand. I'm sad because of this and that and this and that. And I was talking with someone yesterday who was like in a real bad place, and they kept saying, well, I'm sad because of this, and this. Like, it was all things, and I'm like, you're kind of pattern sadness. I mean, you didn't get a lot of sleep, you didn't eat well. I mean, like maybe that's, maybe it's just, maybe it's just physiologic, right? But you're attaching all these meanings and it's making it worse. So, super interesting stuff. Do you have any like real specific questions for Krysta, or what do you think?
Can you come back and do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
I think I would like that. I'd like to talk with you about more of this topic, more about from someone that has essentially shed so many different layers, that started by living their passion. I'd love to talk more about next time about, you come from a family that lives their passion and what that looks like. And so, I think that would be my request would be come back and let's do it again.
I'd be happy to come back. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
No, awesome.
Great. And then do you have any other, kind of like last little bits? We had a lot of cool conversations today, but maybe more so on the like finding yourself, doing your thing. Do you have any last little bits to the audience?
I mean, I have so many. I mean, I could go on and on, but I think sometimes we think we can change everything all at once, and it's just one step. Like we were talking about that earlier. It's like you don't have to. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. Like you are you, and you have to figure out these little things. And like some people, I mean, I am a big like combust your life and just run, but some people just need to take little steps. And so like it's always take the first step and just like feel the fear, do it anyways kind of situation. It's like just do it. And also don't try to outlogic your intuition. Because I think we do that a lot. And as humans, we are more intuitive than we think. And I've seen it, and especially women's intuition is very strong, like very strong. But I also see that like if you have a gut tug and like a heart tug towards something, there's a reason behind it. If you feel like something is guiding you, even though you can't explain it, and like my highly logical friends that are almost fearful of their intuition, but they start to like tap into it a little bit, like they are like, wow, like it's real. I'm like, yeah, because I think we're put on this earth, everybody's put on this earth for a reason to follow. You find your passions, or you're living out some sort of lesson you have to learn, or there's something you're put on this earth for. And I think that you just following that and like just trusting it and just kind of releasing and allowing yourself to just be a little bit guided and not feel like you have to control everything. I think that's like my 2 cents.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you can find us on Spotify, most podcast platforms. Just search Simple Healthy Life. You'll be able to see Krysta's handles and your social medias, kind of down below. But give her a like, give her a follow, give us a like, a follow, drop us a comment, all that kind of beautiful stuff. But we will catch you next time.